Here we go. There we go. Good evening, everybody. It's very, very good to be here and to be having this class in which we try to do things differently. You know, we want to try things different. We want to change a little bit. University, well, it was supposed to be something new, right? We have to think about new ways to reach out and to help people learning in different ways. So that's what we are doing this semester. We are having here the behavioral economics of global affairs. I told you last time that I don't really like this name, the behavioral economics of global affairs. If we were to translate to Portuguese, it would be a economia comportamental dos assuntos globais. And then it sounds a little bit like diplomacy. Sounds like embaixador está cuidando de assuntos internacionais. And what we actually mean is the behavioral economics of global issues. A economia comportamental de assuntos, de questões globais, de desafios globais. All right, so what this is all about, again, what are we trying to do here? I will try to synthesize this, to summarize this in one single phrase. Vou tentar sintetizar numa frase única. Information is not enough. Informação não é suficiente. So, let me give you an example here. You guys will immediately understand what we are trying to do. So, everybody have heard about dengue. Todo mundo sabe o que é dengue, né? A gente vive numa área, né, do Nordeste, em que talvez não seja a pior do Brasil, né? Eu acho que em São Paulo os surtos de dengue são bem mais agressivos que aqui, mas a gente tem uma população muito grande exposta ao problema da dengue. All right, so here comes this health agent. He comes into a community and he tells people that they cannot have water standing still in their houses, right? Eles não podem ter água parada, deixadas no seu jardim, na sua varanda. What happens is that we have the mosquitoes multiplying, right? They reproduce, and then we have a huge problem. But it turns out that people know that. People know that already. We have explained that so many times. We have had so many campaigns that people already know they cannot have water standing still in their properties. As pessoas já sabem que não é para deixar água parada. And then you can ask why they don't realize that, why they don't act like this. Por que as pessoas não evitam isso? Por que na prática, no dia a dia, cada um de nós, né, é mais fácil a gente, em vez de apontar o dedão lá para os outros, a gente apontar o dedão para a gente mesmo. Por que às vezes a gente não age com base numa informação que a gente tem? So, information is not enough. Sometimes you have to have like a context, a social context, um contexto social, and that social context can either favor the adoption of some habits or block the adoption of some behaviors. Então, o contexto social pode favorecer, dependendo da vizinhança, dependendo da vivência daquelas pessoas, ou pode bloquear. And if you think that we are talking here about character, values, it's not what we are talking about. Nós já temos experimentos o suficientes para saber que nós não estamos falando aqui de índole, de caráter, de valor das pessoas. A gente não está aqui para julgar as pessoas, falar assim, poxa, pessoa sabia do problema da dengue e mesmo assim deixou a água. Se você for conversar com aquela pessoa, você vai descobrir que ela, por exemplo, faz trabalho voluntário, que ela ajuda um monte de gente, que ela é super parceira dos vizinhos, com todo quanto é o tipo de problema. Então, não é por uma pessoa ser boa ou ruim. We have to help people make better decisions for themselves, by themselves. Então, nós temos que ajudar as pessoas a fazer melhores decisões, melhores atitudes para elas mesmas e por elas mesmas. One way to say that in Portuguese, it's a very common way to say, is empoderamento. Essa é uma palavra que está na moda, digamos assim. A gente vê as pessoas usando essa palavra para todo o contexto. Não, o empoderamento feminino, o empoderamento LGBT, e a maior parte das vezes essa palavra é usada no espírito muito positivo, muito importante para um país como o Brasil. Mas a gente vai ver que às vezes tem mais detalhes, tá? Em vez de a gente só ter uma fórmula, a gente vai ter mais detalhes para lidar com essas questões. Alright, so I suggest you guys to have a look at this video. And I'm going to start saying a little bit about this video, and then I will ask you to complement. You can answer me in English, in Portuguese, by opening up your mic or by just typing in the chat, okay? But I want to hear some of your comments about this video, okay? I will start, okay? All right, so this guy's name is Daniel Kahneman. Daniel Kahneman é um ganhador de prêmio Nobel. But not only that, okay, so you won a Nobel Prize, what's the big deal? No, this guy is a fascinating fellow because he had an idea, and this idea was not accepted in economics. A ideia dele, a proposta de pesquisa dele, não era reconhecida dentro da economia. Ele teve que brigar, ele teve que lutar por décadas para tentar convencer as pessoas que o que ele tinha não era apenas uma crítica a um pedacinho bem particular dos modelos econômicos. What he actually proposed was that we needed a better vision of human rationality. Ele propôs algo muito fundamental. A gente precisa de uma melhor interpretação da racionalidade humana. Os pressupostos de racionalidade da teoria econômica não batiam com a realidade. All right, so how did he manage to do that? Well, he adopted a very controversial line of research. Ele adotou uma linha muito controversa de pesquisa. And that was experimental economics. Wait, come on, Luiz Maia. You're talking about human cobaias? Você está falando de fazer as pessoas de cobaia? Francamente, Luiz Maia, seu neoliberal. No. That's not what I'm talking about. You're not going to treat people like little rats. Nós não vamos tratar as pessoas como ratinhos. Even though the psychologists have done that for some time over the 20th century. É verdade que alguns psicólogos destemperados, antes da emergência de conselhos de ética mais robustos na pesquisa, chegaram a fazer experimentos com seres humanos e alguns deles foram trágicos, foram com resultados muito graves. So, that's not what we're going to try to do, okay? We're going to try most of the time to create situations in which people participate voluntarily, and it's going to go over all sorts of ethical revision. Então esse cara falou assim, não, eu vou fazer pequenos experimentos muito simples, alguns deles até que são naturais, que eu vou só observar, e eu vou tentar sempre fazer da maneira mais ética possível, com objetivos bem claros, bem específicos, gerando zero de constrangimento, gerando zero de qualquer perda para as pessoas. All right, so that's how he got to the discussion that we had in that video. In that video, they were basically talking about how we form memories, how people create their memories, and how we make decisions based on kind of two selves. Como que a gente toma decisões baseadas em duas pessoas próprias, né? Tem a pessoa que se lembra das suas experiências passadas, e tem na nossa cabeça também, tem o eu que se lembra e tem o eu que está experimentando o presente. And he's trying to argue that these two selves, sometimes they are not the same. Many times they think differently. Então, as pessoas que estão aqui agora, né, o seu eu, a sua personalidade, aquilo que você considera sua identidade, muitas vezes entra em certa discussão, em conflito com alguma coisa que você lembra, com como você lembra. O termo disso, que ele não usou, assim, o termo técnico disso, é dissonância cognitiva. A gente cria uma espécie de um desconforto entre aquilo que a gente gostaria de fazer e aquilo que a nossa experiência, a nossa memória, muitas vezes, acaba nos aconselhando a fazer. All right, and then he goes about this big discussion about how happy people are. And then his most central argument is that depending on how you form your memories, you may declare yourself to be miserable. Dependendo de como você forma suas memórias, você pode se considerar uma pessoa em estado miserável, de tanto sofrimento. And basically he tells us, look, I'm not here trying to tell people what they should and what they should not do. Ele não está ali fazendo uma prescrição do que as pessoas devem ou não devem fazer. What he's trying to do and say, this is what we observe. Those are things that happen regularly, all the time. We have seen them so many times that we can categorize them, we can explain them, and somehow we can predict them. Então, são coisas que acontecem com tanta frequência, em diferentes contextos, que ele consegue transformar aquilo numa teoria. Ele categoriza, ele explica, e ele faz previsões sobre comportamentos. All right, so it sounds a little bit scary if you think that you are running experiments with people. But it turns out that we suffer experiments all the time. Think about this, right? You are driving your car. You were late for your class. It was not my case, okay? I came from Uber. All right, but let's suppose that I was driving my car. I was late for my class. I was very anxious to be here to start our class. And then there's this red light. You know, the stoplight is red. And I feel like, you know what? Not too many cars around. I think I'm going to go through, right? Então, eu deveria parar no sinal vermelho, eu dou uma olhada para um lado, para o outro, falo, não tem muita gente por aqui, eu vou passar direto. All right, when I do that, then there is this camera, they take a picture of me, and they will give me a ticket. All right, if you think about this, there is a law, there is a regulation telling me that this thing was going to happen. And they know it happens, even though people get tickets. Então, quando as pessoas estabeleceram as primeiras multas, eles sabiam que mesmo dando multa, as pessoas continuavam furando sinal. Algumas delas continuavam dirigindo sob efeito de drogas, principalmente aquelas socialmente aceitas, né, que é o álcool. Então, as pessoas falam, bom, então nós vamos aumentar a multa. Vamos colocar a multa agora de 200 para 500 reais. Ainda não adiantou. Então, vamos aumentar a multa. Vamos para 900 reais. If you think about this is an experiment. You know, the regulation runs experiment. And so there's a state. Existe um estado que a gente, como cidadão, autoriza, we authorize the state to run some sorts of experiments with us. as long as they are ethical, they promote good, they try to help people, we kind of accept them, all right? So what I'm trying to say is this. We're going to be very, very ethical about experiments here, and we're going to criticize a lot people who run unethical experiments. So if any of you here comes from marketing, or if you work with marketing, I have to tell you right away, we are going to criticize you guys a lot, ok? No marketing, gente, infelizmente, muitas vezes, as pessoas estão sendo manipuladas, estão sujeitas a experimentos, muitos deles são antiéticos, muitos deles violam princípios mais elementares de dignidade humana. Então, existe uma grande diferença entre behavior economics and marketing. And it's a very unfortunate that some behavior economics professors gain their lives, gain their living teaching marketing classes. É muito infeliz quando a gente vê economistas comportamentais migrando para a área de marketing para ganhar dinheiro. That's something that happens a lot, but we're going to talk about that later. So, let's go back to Daniel Kahneman. So, he was talking about happiness, felicidade, como que a memória está relacionada com felicidade. And there are many profound messages that he discussed there. I don't know if you have had the chance there to really understand all these things, but he's trying to say, look, this is a natural trend. É uma tendência natural. When we look back at one experience, quando a gente tenta reviver uma experiência do passado, we are not as precise as a film, as a movie, you know? We actually edit the experience. Quando a gente tenta reviver o passado, não é como se a gente fizesse um documentário sobre aquela experiência. Na verdade, o que a gente faz é editar as cenas. A gente dá ênfase para uma cena especial, a gente leva muito em conta como o filme termina. All right, so these two things, we have to be aware of that. Otherwise, we can live miserable lives. If we keep focusing on the bad part of our lives, we are all going to have reasons to cry. Se todos nós só ficarmos nos lembrando dos momentos tristes das nossas vidas, nós todos teremos momentos para chorar. Teremos razões para ficar chorando. Entrar em depressão até. All right, so this is my first reflections here. Let me see what you guys got. Something that you want to complement, you want to add to what I have just said. Let's see. Quem gostaria de começar? Deixa eu ver aqui no chat se já tem alguém. Oh, Laurilady is telling me about all the time social media users like guinea pigs. That's right. That's true, Laurilady. Yeah, that's one thing that some of us got more aware of. Muitos de nós ficamos mais conscientes disso when we watched this documentary in Netflix. What's the name of it again? I will remember. Tem um documentário no Netflix que fala sobre a maneira como essas notificações do nosso celular acabam manipulando profundamente a nossa forma de pensar. I will remember later the name of the documentary, but yeah, it's true. We have to be very much aware of that. And I think I told you, right, in the first meeting, that my cell phone, it doesn't ring. I have no notification whatsoever. If you send me a message, I will only know if and only I decide to take a look at the cell phone. Otherwise, this thing is going to be vibrating, sending beeps, and trying to catch my attention the whole day. So I'm very, very aware of that. Privacidade hackeada. Yeah, that's true. No, dilema da rede. Yeah, dilema das redes. Eu acho que era esse, Ítala.
O documentário que eu vi foi esse dilema das redes aí, que eles chamam algumas pessoas que participaram da criação das redes sociais, né?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the one. Dilema das redes. In a way, this can be so good, you know, you can get people closer. You can talk to your parents daily basis. You can talk to your friends, people who live abroad. So supposedly this was such a good thing. But on the other hand, if we don't take control, this thing can control you, right? Se a gente não tomar as rédeas, essas redes sociais passam a ter controle sobre a gente. É bem verdade isso mesmo. All right, but let me listen about your opinions of the video. Let's be straight here, okay? Absolutely honest. Please raise your hand if you did not have time to watch the video. It's okay. I'm not gonna tell your mom. Barbara, come on, guys. Let me see the hands over there. Okay, so only Barbara was honest tonight. Oh, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right. So you guys have seen the video. Please tell me what you got, what you didn't got, if it was hard to watch. Marcus, thank you. Clara. All right, guys.
I I watched it. I want to talk.
Okay. Go ahead, Clara.
I thought interesting the part of the organ donators in Europe that some countries have a high rank of people that donate their organs, and some countries have not. And it's interesting that he talked about the similarities of this country, but in the end, it was just a question that the Detran of them they check or didn't check the the option.
All
It
right.
was very interesting because honestly, I wouldn't read.
Yeah, that's right. So Clara is telling about this very important fact, and we actually are going to call that the default effect. Later on, I'm going to explain to you about this thing. But it turns out that when we have a standard, which is somehow like a pre-choice for us, and then we just have to concede or to reject. But if something like it is a standard, many times we don't want to change. Então, explicando em português, muitas vezes as pessoas, os países eram muito semelhantes, mas o fato de você ter uma grande parte da população se considerando doador de órgão ou não, era baseado numa mudança muito sutil, que era, num dos casos, você nasceu, você é doador de órgão. Quando você tira a sua carteira, você tem a opção de dizer, quero não ser doador de órgão. Se você não fizer nada, você continua sendo doador de órgãos. Nos outros países, acontece igual no Brasil. Para ser doador de órgãos, você tem que dizer que quer ser doador de órgãos. Se você não fizer nada, você não é doador de órgãos. All right, so it looks like a very small difference, but small differences like that can make the whole change, the whole society change. And then we have the extremely large impact in organ donation, right? How many people will survive a surgery or an accident? It's going to be completely different in this or that country. Go ahead, Marcus. I can see your hand there.
Okay. There are two moments in the video that caught my attention a lot. When he speaks, we don't really choose between experience, we choose between memories of experience. The whole experience could have been wonderful, but if the end is bad, we associate the experience with something bad. I stopped to think and remember some situations, and it's pretty funny how it comes through.
Yeah. It's
And
amazing, right? I mean, you can
yes,
relate to that, right?
yes, and when he says we think of the future as early memories. In a way, it's right. We see the future as a reflection of our past,
Yes.
which doesn't make much sense because if we stop and see, the future is completely covered in uncertainties.
Yeah. That's
Doesn't
true.
make sense, but we act like that.
Yeah. Now, the great thing about this, Marcos, I agree totally with you. You know, these are very good 2 points that you raised. And the thing about this is like we have like little stories that we call memories. And sometimes we create little stories for the future. So we are like the director of this movie and we anticipate these things. So depending on what is our focus, we can create terrible expectations. So if you are going through a difficult time in your life, you can become very pessimistic and look to the future and say, oh no, I prefer to die. You know, I don't want to experience that. So it's very amazing how we can elaborate future experiences, and sometimes we are not balanced at all. Muitas vezes, quando a gente imagina o que vai ser o nosso futuro, a gente é muito desequilibrado. A gente só pensa por um lado, ou vai dar tudo certo, ou vai dar tudo errado. So, life is not like this, right? Life is always more complex. Edilson is telling us here in the chat, I watched it, but I didn't understand 100%. This is a good point, Edilson. No problem at all, okay? The best way to have a good experiences with these materials is to not require 100% comprehension. If you are so much stressed that you have to understand everything, this is going to be a pain in the neck. Se você ficar estressado lá tentando entender 100%, aquilo vira um saco, tá? Então, não faça isso. Vá mesmo no fluxo, vá pegando as ideias, vá entendendo assim as grandes linhas da direção. E aqui e ali, se você quiser parar e voltar a ouvir de novo alguma coisa, ou então botar a legenda, pode fazer, tá? But Edilson was saying, yeah, I can say that I agree with everything he said. Had to watch 3 times. One quote I like the most is, we think about the future as anticipated memories. Yeah, this is a fascinating way to put it, right? So you can see that the guy gave a lot of thought about this. Esse cara realmente pensou muito sobre essa situação. Ele não só rodou os experimentinhos lá, seja lá quais forem. Ele conversou com as pessoas, ele interpretou isso. Então, não se trata de alguém que, de uma maneira prematura ou precipitada, sai fazendo conclusões sobre o raciocínio das pessoas. Ele tem uma teoria por trás, ele constrói essas observações com base na ciência. All right, this is great. Laurileide, as well, Edilson, I need to watch again. Thanks. Usually reflecting things that have already happened. Yeah, that's true, Marcos. Sometimes, most of the stories we project to the future, they reflect specific stories of our pasts. Yeah, this is the point. Now, you can see that the very consequence of these issues is astonishing, is somehow worrisome. Think about it. People can get stuck. As pessoas podem ficar travadas se elas tiverem tido traumas muito fortes e ficarem projetando para o futuro que aquilo só vai se repetir daquele jeito. You know, people can get stuck. As pessoas podem ficar travadas por longos períodos na sua vida. Now, if that is true, and I'm going to anticipate here a lot, okay? I'm going to the middle of our class there, a few weeks ahead, and I'm going to tell you something that worries me too, you know? Societies can get stuck. Now, please take a look around. Look at this beautiful country we have. how many decades we're going to spend fighting each other, living behind doors, behind walls, behind gates, separating us from poor people. How long we're going to live afraid of walking the streets, and how long it will take us to see that social inclusion, it's an easy way out of this mess. A inclusão social é, na verdade, um caminho fácil para a gente sair dos problemas que a gente tem. Um país como o Brasil está muito tempo parado, sem se dar conta de que esse capítulo da inclusão social já passou, gente. A gente já devia ter feito isso há muitas décadas atrás. Hoje as pessoas estão voltando a discutir política afirmativa na universidade, como se não tivesse funcionando, como se a gente não tivesse provocando uma verdadeira revolução, melhorando a universidade, melhorando a sociedade, melhorando o mercado de trabalho. And people are still saying, no, maybe we're going to have to look back and see. All right, so not only people can get stuck, but societies can get stuck. And if you think Brazil is a terrible case, don't worry, we have much, much worse cases. Se você acha que o Brasil é um caso grave, você não faz ideia. Tem países em situação muito pior. And one I like to give as an example is like the Palestinians and the Israel people. This is amazing. I mean, how many decades people will keep fighting and hating each other, right? This has been going on for 60 years. Eles estão se matando há 60 anos. Gerações. Toda família tem a história de um primo, de um tio, de um avô que foi morto num conflito. Dos dois lados. For decades. I mean, for everybody who's outside, it's absolutely obvious that they should change their strategies, they should change the way they do things. But they are stuck. Eles estão travados num padrão conflituoso. All right, so you can see that we are going to really discuss some very important global issues over here, okay? Vocês estão vendo que a gente vai sim para cima dessas grandes questões globais. A gente vai falar de pobreza, a gente vai falar de discriminação, a gente vai falar de conflito, essas grandes questões globais, ok? Go ahead, Laurileide, please.
I try speaking English.
Okay, this is great.
When you speak social inclusão social,
Social inclusion.
social inclusion, what does mean specifically?
All right. So everybody understood the question, right? Está perguntando assim, quando eu falei social inclusion, what do I mean? All right, so here's the thing. We have a society who still prevents people from reaching their own potential. We still discriminate people from birth. You know, depending on your set, depending on the place you were born, you're going to have such and such opportunities in life. If you don't, if you are born in different places, if you are born with different color of skin, you're going to have absolutely, completely different lives and life patterns, okay? So what I mean social inclusion, that we have to realize that social exclusion is not natural. It is a system, it is built to work this way. Então, quando eu quis dizer inclusão social, eu estava querendo dizer que a nossa sociedade precisa se reconhecer excludente. Precisa reconhecer que a gente tem mecanismos que funcionam estáveis, institucionais, de exclusão. A gente convive com eles como se eles fossem naturais, mas eles não são. Eles são construções. E a gente herdou muito desses mecanismos de exclusão social do passado. Uma parte deles até voltando lá do período da escravidão. So we are still stuck in some of these ways of thinking. You know, the way we think. Let me give you a very good example, Laurileide. Some people argue that what Brazil needs is a merit system, a merit-based system. Que a gente precisa de um sistema social baseado no mérito. Se você prestar, você cresce, fica rico, ganha tudo. Se você não prestar, aí você se lasca, vai para a cadeia, vai... This is absolutely absurd. You know, this discussion is absolutely absurd because people don't realize that this is not what you see out there. What you see out there is a structure created to separate between people, to tell you, you are going to have this in this journey, you're going to have that. So it's very common to see, let me give this example because I think it's the most repulsive. It's very easy to see how a black kid, a black person, sometimes they enter a store and everybody look at them saying like, what are you doing here? Just because a person is black. You know, this is what still happens in Brazil. So this thing is not natural. We are not living something that is a consequence of nature. It's been like this forever. No, we are living in a system that was created, was built to separate people, to discriminate people, and then we have to change those institutions. It's a hard thing to do. Many people will complain, they will not agree, because they are stuck. They have some traumas in the past, they have learned, in quotes, they have learned that that's the way it was supposed to be. And we have like a very deep form of learning. We're going to talk here later on about social learning, aprendizado social. Aprendizado social é uma discussão muito interessante. A very famous Canadian psychologist named Albert Bandura. Unfortunately, he passed away last year, but we're going to talk about him. Então, nós vamos falar disso. Nós vamos falar de um país que não discrimina acidentalmente, não é uma coisa natural, é uma estrutura montada. Quando a gente fala em fazer inclusão social, a gente realmente tem que falar sobre mudanças estruturais. Mudança como as organizações funcionam, mudança como a escola funciona, mudança como o dinheiro do orçamento público é gasto. We're going to have to go deep to change this. Does that make sense? Laurileide? All right, good. Go ahead.
Então, mais uma coisa. Há poucos anos atrás, a gente teve uma inclusão de pessoas, principalmente no sistema financeiro. Cartão de crédito para todo mundo de forma indiscriminada. Uhum. Isso pode sinalizar uma inclusão social?
Very barely. I mean, it is part of a social inclusion to give people access to financial instruments. É parte de histórias muito interessantes de inclusão social, a criação de instrumentos financeiros que vão às comunidades. Então, a gente tem histórias belíssimas disso acontecendo, não só no mundo afora, mas aqui no Brasil, né? A gente tem o Banco do Nordeste, a gente vai falar sobre essas experiências de crédito comunitário, moeda social, moeda comunitária, banco comunitário, nós vamos falar disso. So, providing financial instruments to poor people or to vulnerable people, well, it can help. But most of the times, getting a credit card will not solve, not even a bit. And it will create other problems too, right? Many times. So financial inclusion, it is not giving someone a credit card. Actually, that's probably the opposite of it. You have to help people save money. You shouldn't help people borrow money. If it were like a strategy, you should start with teaching people how to save little money, right? Tem histórias curiosíssimas, Laurileides, de alguns países da Ásia, em que eles foram pesquisar, descobriram que certos comerciantes serviam como depositantes de moedas, de pequenas moedas, trocos, que as donas de casa conseguiam guardar numa estrutura familiar paternal, né, de paternalista, de patriarcal, perdão, que as mulheres, o pouquinho de dinheiro que elas tinham num troco em alguma coisa, elas precisavam guardar. E aí eles começavam a pagar para fazer depósito. Olha só. A gente geralmente recebe juros de fazer depósito, né, de deixar nosso dinheiro com alguém. Elas pagavam, e aquilo fazia total sentido, porque era a única forma de guardar dinheiro. Anyway, we're going to talk about financial inclusion here too. All right. Marcos is saying that, all right, Laurileide is saying about Venezuela, and yeah, we are very much concerned about Venezuela too. It is a society stuck, one more time, and it's a pattern of conflict, é padrão de conflito muito importante. All right, so I think I made my point here, guys. These videos, in those cases, you are not supposed to, write it down, everything you understood. We are not going to make a test out of it, but we're going to try more and more, expose your hearing to these different accents, right? Nós vamos tentar expor vocês a ouvir essas diferentes ideias e esses diferentes, como é que se diz? Accents.
Sotaques.
Sotaque. All right, thank you, Itala. You see, sometimes we switch the key here, and it's hard to switch back. All right, so Laurileide is recognizing here, yeah, I'm giving an example of Amartya Sen, yes. And this is a very interesting history of the financial system in Bangladesh, right? We're going to talk about that too. All right. Okay, guys, let me start a little bit to talk about some of the class notes that I submitted to you. Have you guys, please raise your hand if you have the chance to visit the Google Classroom and you could see the class notes there. Please raise your hand if you did. All right, almost everybody. Great. So let me share here something that you guys already have there. So I actually started last class talking a little bit about this class notes, right? We talked about The Economist, the magazine. So when they introduced the third option, people started behaving in all different ways. We talk a little bit about that too. But then here comes another behavior economist. And for coincidence, is another Daniel, Dan Ariely, or O'Reilly, if you prefer in English. So check this out. The questions that he asks you. In the last 30 days, how many times have I ate too much?
Every day.
I texted while driving. Well, that I don't do. I think I did 1 or 2 times in my life, but I don't do anymore. My daughters watch me if I try. How many times I spent money and regretted it afterwards? Well, sometimes it does. How many times I spend too much time on social networks? Oh, come on, no, that we can say. How many times have I procrastinated? I left for later something important. Well, we do that, guys. How many times I drank more than I wanted? So what it looks like that then Ariely is trying to make us feel bad, right? He's saying, come on, we are not rational at all. So the point is not this. The point he's trying to say is the following. Human rationality is not what we expect it to be. Então, gente, olha só, essa é uma mensagem importante. ele não está colocando ninguém para baixo. Ele não está dizendo que nós somos, sei lá, tristes criaturas, miseráveis, incapazes de autocontrole. Não é isso que ele está dizendo. Ele está dizendo pelo contrário. Ele está falando, olha, nós somos criaturas extraordinárias, mas que, para sermos tão extraordinárias assim, o nosso cérebro é extremamente flexível. E algumas dessas flexibilidades permitem que a gente muitas vezes aja de forma aparentemente irracional. Right? So, if I mismanage my time, if I look here at the clock and say, no, we still have 20 minutes. I'm going to spend this 20 minutes talking about this one slide. If I mismanage time, that's not because I'm completely irrational, but I have to understand what is the human rationality? What are its characteristics? What exactly is human rationality, okay? In order to do that, we have this big plan in our class. First, we're going to talk a lot about individual behavior, and we're going to dedicate some time to discuss one specific topic, which is cognitive biases. Vieses cognitivos. Okay, we're going to talk a lot about that. So what are those again? Well, those are like trends or tendencies of behavior. São tendências de comportamento. And those are not cultural, okay? Those are not in Brazil and not in the United States. They are not about Chinese people and not Russian people. No, they are all over, okay? We're talking about mind tricks, mind missteps that most of us, 99.9% of people in this planet tend to do, okay? Then we're going to move to organizations. We're going to talk, for example, about discrimination. We're going to talk about unethical behavior. We're going to tell you here what corporate frauds are made of. Look at that. Look at this sentence. Nós vamos te mostrar aqui do que é feita uma fraude corporativa. De que é feito esses grandes escândalos corporativos. All right? Most of the times people just say it's greed. É a ganância. Or sometimes they say it's capitalism. É o capitalismo. And what we're going to try and show is that it's not. Most of the times it's people. Those also happen in socialist societies. They also happen in communist societies. So we're going to try and see how organizations can become evil. Como que organizações formadas muitas vezes de pessoas boas podem agir de maneira muito maliciosa e completamente antiética. All right. And the third, we're going to talk about communities, societies, cities like Recife, right? One of the things that mesmerizes me all the time is that I've become very, very much aware that if climate change scenarios crystallize, if they become real, Recife is going to change a lot. Uma das coisas que não me sai da cabeça é o fato de que uma sociedade como a sociedade recifense não discuta o problema de mudança climática. Não está na pauta, não está na agenda do prefeito, do governador, não está na agenda das pessoas da cidade. E se os cenários mais prováveis de aquecimento global se manifestarem, essa cidade vai mudar drasticamente nos próximos 100 anos. Drasticamente, vai ser outra cidade. Okay, so we're going to talk about how come Recife is not talking about this. How come people don't realize this has to be the subject, right? Go ahead, loaded lady. I saw your hand.
Eu acredito que não tem discussão porque já está decidido. Eu vou dar um exemplo. Eu moro aqui em Piedade e toda a orla estava comprometida por conta do avanço do mar.
Uhum.
E nos últimos 8 anos, houve uma reconstrução de toda a faixa de areia.
Uhum.
E agora estão construindo o calçadão na beira-mar. Então, assim, para que discutir? Já está decidido.
Yeah. Yeah, I see your point, but it turns out that this decision, people don't fully understand what the decision is. People make a decision and they don't realize what are the consequences of their decisions. All right, another point, another very important point, Laurileide. Thanks for your comment. You remind me of talking about something very, very important in behavior economics. The expression is delayed feedback. Let me write it here at the chat. Delayed feedback. If the return, the consequences of your acts are only known far in the future, then people do stupid things all the time. Se a consequência de fumar só aparece depois de 50 anos fumando, as pessoas seguem fumando durante décadas. If the consequences of the way we manage Recife today are going to be suffered in 80 years from now, people don't say, well, it's not my business. Yeah, no, I'm not concerned. So delayed feedback is a huge problem in behavior economics. Somehow we have to help people realize what the consequences of their acts are. We have to help people know, and not only know, but they need to visualize. Because knowing sometimes is not enough, right? As I began the class today, information many times is not enough. All right, go ahead, Marcus.
One good example we have here is the flood problem in
Exactly.
Recife. Every time it rains, the whole city floods.
Yes.
Every year, we know this will happen, and every year it keeps happening.
Yeah. It's
It doesn't
amazing.
make sense.
And Marcus, notice, I have discussed this with engineers. I ask them, look, come on, I don't want to make fun of you, but please tell me, you know about this, right? You know
We
that's
all
gonna
know this is gonna happen
happen.
every year.
They give me a more complex solution or response. They say, you know what, Luis, we know, but most of the times we have to argue to help people realize that we have to take precautions for that, you know? So if you have like a street being constructed, if you have like a new road being opened, the engineers have to fight to convince politicians that water is going to come through. Eles têm que brigar para convencer os políticos de que sem um sistema de drenagem da água, a água vai atravessar aquilo e vai destruir. Eles têm que brigar. And many times they just give up. They say, what? You know what? I told you, here it is, my document. I advised you to do that. If you don't want to, I don't care. But sometimes it goes like this. You have to fight so people will understand that we're going to have huge consequences of not taking care of the rain, right? How obvious is the rain? Apparently not as much as it should be. Okay, so I couldn't finish this class today without talking to you about the difference between behavior economics and marketing, okay? So let me give you an example of the things that we are not doing here. Here you have this guy named Roberto Cialdini. He's a good researcher, you know, he's someone respected in his field, but he's telling you what are the secrets of persuasion. Quais são as armas da persuasão? He tells you that supposedly this thing is a book to tell you how to avoid persuasion. But that's not entirely true. He's teaching people about the tricks, all right? How to get people to say yes. So there's a huge industry, the marketing business. Most of these people, they're basically dedicated, focused on how to make the consumer say yes and buy some stuff. Okay? I think I have some hands risen here. Let me see. No? In the Itamaracá beach, the course of the sea recently changed. I didn't know about that, Deborah, but that's scary, right? I mean, consequences are getting closer and closer, right? Maybe what I was saying here, 80 years, maybe it's not that long. Maybe we are talking about 50 or 30 years from now, you know? Yeah, it's really. So what are the 6 statics, okay, of persuasion? First, reciprocity. Somehow you get to a point of sale, some market, and people give you something. They say, oh, I'm going to give you this. I'm going to give you a sample of this ice cream. I'm going to help you here with such and such thing. I'm going to lend you some umbrella or something like that. So you feel like you are obliged to reciprocate. Você sente como se você devesse devolver de volta aquilo que foi feito para você. Quando você está nessa posição, it's very likely you're going to say yes. Second point is scarcity. So people create the false sensation of scarcity. Escassez, gente. É muito comum as estratégias de venda criarem uma ilusão de escassez. Então eles falam assim: here, come and buy some onions. It's going to be R$5 o quilo, and no one can take more than 3 kilos. Se eu coloco lá no meu anúncio que a batata está saindo a R$5 o quilo, mas que nenhum cliente pode levar mais que 3 quilos, what I'm trying to give you is the impression that this thing is just about to finish. So hurry up, come quick and buy it, otherwise you're not going to get it, right? So you give people the sense of scarcity. Escassez. Você cria uma falsa sensação de escassez. E aí você faz as pessoas comprarem rápido. The third one is authority. I think I have some scenes here. Let me get this. Yeah, the Colgate. A marca número 1 em recomendação dos dentistas. Okay, so this is authority, right? This is like, come on, look at these dentists here. They are telling you you should buy Colgate or something like that. The fourth one is consistency. So people somehow, they want to show you that if you are a good mother, then you should buy Johnson & Johnson. So they play with your identity and say, if you have to buy the best, if you feel like you are a good person, a good mother or something like that, right? The fifth one is affect. And in this case, we are talking about afeto mesmo, feelings. So we have puppets trying to convince people to buy cars. We have puppies trying to convince people to buy cars. A gente está fazendo uma propaganda de carro e coloca lá um cachorrinho bonitinho, fofinho. All right, it works. It may look stupid, but it works. People do buy more if they associate that with some sort of nice picture, a gentle, caring identity. Okay. And finally, consensus. You have to buy because everybody's buying. You have to have this because everybody's having. So the way people drink coffee, after you watch all this Hollywood stars drinking coffee, I don't need to tell you that this is a Starbucks. We don't even have a Starbucks store in Recife, but I bet 90% of you here know what Starbucks is. We don't even have a store of Starbucks in Recife, and people know what Starbucks is.
It's because it's so hard to hear.
Yeah, it's true. Okay, so this McDonald's sign here is saying that they have sold over 247 billion meals. Então eles estão falando que eles já venderam 247 bilhões de refeições. What's your problem? If everybody thinks this is good, why don't you think it is good? You have to think it is good, right? So you have to adhere to the consensus. Você tem que aderir ao consenso, all right? So these are all tactics of persuasion. So the lady here sees his kid getting some sort of cookie or, I don't know, toast. And then he feels like, yeah, now I will have to purchase that. So you feel like you have to reciprocate. Você tem que agir em agradecimento àquilo. Sometimes you say, okay, you have to purchase. These offers are valid through May 3rd or just until Friday. You have to come now or something like this. This is scarcity. Okay, so all of that, this is not behavior economics. What we're trying to do here is to manipulate people. Behavior economics is a science. We have to understand people, and most of the times what we want to do is to help people making better decisions for themselves, okay? There's a huge difference here. In marketing, what you're trying to get is the consumer to say yes. If it is good for him or her, it doesn't matter. They have to say yes. They have to purchase. What we're trying to do here is not marketing. What we're trying to do here is to understand the human rationality. And most of the times, we want to help people make better decisions, not for me, not for the president, not for the company, but for themselves. Ok? Economia comportamental é sobre ajudar as pessoas a fazer escolhas melhores para elas, e não para mim, e não para o governo, e não para quem quer que seja. Ok. I have to just start here this topic because this is going to take us a little bit a while. But let's start about what are the rational choices, okay? If I say the expression rational choice, what comes to mind? Let me go back here and see your faces a minute. If I tell you the expression escolha racional, what comes to mind to you?
Science.
Yeah, well, it looks like logic, right? It appeals to logic. Escolha racional apela para uma lógica. Uma lógica muitas vezes matemática. De você ter a precisão na sua escolha. So if a person make rational choices, we're almost sure that you're going to make the best choices, right? So it is impossible, or it's a contradiction to say that someone has made a rational choice and that was bad for her or him, right? É difícil você dizer assim, a pessoa fez uma escolha racional e que era contra ela mesma. You see, the way we have built economics, and not only economics, but also business administration, also other social sciences, a maneira como a gente construiu essas ciências sociais, we are almost agree that if you make rational choices, you think for yourself. So it's like an egotistic view of rational choices. So it is not considered a rational choice to do something for others. Se você fizer alguma coisa que é melhor para os outros e te prejudica, this cannot be a rational choice, right? So the way we have built the economic science, we kind of have these assumptions. Sometimes they are hidden. A gente tem essas hipóteses meio implícitas de que as pessoas vão agir em busca do seu autointeresse. que as pessoas vão fazer tudo para se dar bem e que isso é racional, que essa é uma decisão racional. Well, even though we can consider the ethical aspect of that, before I get there, let me point out this thing for you. The basis of this thought is that what makes a choice rational is its consequence. So, let me explain this in Portuguese because it is a very important point. A base dessa ideia toda de escolhas racionais é de que o que faz uma escolha ser racional ou não é a consequência das escolhas. All right. We cannot ignore the consequences of our choices. That's specific, everybody agrees. But sometimes we have to make choices that are not based on the consequences, but what is appropriate. Think about it, for example. So here comes Sunday, and my daughters, they want to go to the church. But my soccer team is playing, and I want to drink beer. So what is the rational thing to do? As minhas filhas, a gente está no domingo, está na hora de ir para a igreja, elas querem ir para o culto, elas querem, sei lá. Na verdade, aqui em casa a gente tem várias religiões, né? Então, cada um, eu, minha esposa, minhas filhas. But let's say they want to go to the church, and I want to watch soccer and drink beer. What is the rational choice then? Some people will say, well, the rational choice is to think about what is good for you. So what is good for me is to drink beer and watch my team play soccer. But that's not appropriate. It's Sunday. My kids, they need some kind of spiritual perspective. I think it is good that they have some spiritual perspective in life. And what is appropriate is that I will give up my beer, I will give up my soccer match, and I will take them to the church, right? This is what is appropriate. It's not the consequence that matters. I mean, the consequences always matter, but you have to look of what is appropriate. And then you realize that many, many times people actually choose thinking about how they are going to be seen, how they are going to be judged. Muitas vezes a gente faz escolhas não baseadas naquilo que é melhor para nós, mas muitas vezes baseadas naquilo que a gente acha que é correto, que as pessoas vão nos julgar como estando agindo bem ou agindo mal. Some people may say, oh, so we are not free to make choices. Well, you can look at this way, or you can say, what is the level of freedom that you want to exercise? Right? As pessoas podem falar assim, não, mas se você tem que pensar no que os outros pensam para tomar decisões, então você não é livre? Aí você tem que se perguntar assim, não, mas espera aí, qual que é o nível de liberdade que você pretende exercer? Você pretende exercitar? É uma liberdade que só mede as consequências para você mesmo e não mede as consequências para os outros? All right, guys, I know what you guys have noticed what I'm talking about, right? I'm talking about vaccines here. I'm trying to get you in a very subtle way to this huge controversy about vaccination, right? People don't realize that this is a collective decision. This is not a single decision. Some people argue that they have the right to not vaccinate. And in some sense, I can see their point, but people have to also realize that the disease is a collective problem. It's not a personal problem. More people will die if each of us will only think for him or herself. Much, much more people. So it's kind of how we're going to get out of this mess collectively. In a way or the other, the decisions will have to be collective. As decisões precisam ser coletivas. Ainda que você tenha que, na melhor das intenções, tentar dar voz, ouvido e escutar as pessoas que divergem, que têm opiniões distintas. Mas os problemas coletivos não vão poder ter solução individual. Não tem jeito, nós vamos ter que chegar num consenso, vamos ter que fazer um acordo. Até onde vai? Let me give you one thing to think. Our time is up. I have to stop the class now, but the discussion is so good that we keep talking, right? So let me finish here, just giving you something else to think, okay? Just one more thing. You are too young to know that, but in the past, like 20, 30 years behind, if you took a plane, if you took a flight to go somewhere, there were parts of the plane in which people could smoke, and some other parts people could not smoke. So when you purchase a ticket in order to fly, they would ask you, are you a smoker or not? And it was somehow a consensus that you have to have this choice, right? Até aquele momento existia um consenso que você falava assim, não, peraí, não pode discriminar os fumantes, né? Então, a gente vai ter uma parte do avião para os fumantes e uma parte para os não fumantes. E na hora que você comprar, você tem que escolher qual ala do avião que você vai ficar e tudo mais. But then, society evolved. And now there's no smoking in airplanes. Hoje, depois de 20, 30 anos discutindo isso, não tem mais o direito de fumar dentro dos aviões. And some people may look at me and say, can you see? Our freedom is diminished. They cut our freedom. Algumas pessoas vão olhar para isso e vão falar, está vendo? Isso é prova de que a nossa liberdade acabou. And I will tell you, no, this is proof that our society has evolved. That we have made a collective decision. Essa, para mim, não é uma prova de que a liberdade foi cortada. É uma prova de que a nossa sociedade evoluiu e que a gente foi capaz de fazer uma escolha coletiva. And people live with collective choices, right? It may be polemical for sometimes. It could be controversial, and somehow it could have conflict for sometimes. But people move on. Societies move on. We find new consensus and we move on, right? I hope we're going to do the same about vaccination sometime in the near future. All right, guys, let me stop the recording here, and then I will be around for a few more minutes if you want to make some comments, if you have some questions. All right.